Hey everyone. Before we begin, I have one small request. If emotional love stories are your thing, stories that evoke feelings, thoughts, and a genuine sense of connection, please subscribe. It's the best way to support this channel and ensure you never miss a story. The glass shattered before anyone saw the waitress stumble. It wasn't a dramatic fall, just a sharp crack, ice skittering across marble, champagne soaking into an impossibly expensive rug. Conversation stalled mid-laugh. Music dipped. Every head in the private dining room turned at once. "I'm so sorry," Layla Kingston said, already crouching, her hands trembling as she reached for the broken stem. "I didn't, someone bumped me, Don't touch that." The voice was calm, controlled, cutting clean through the room. Layla froze. Ashton Miller stood from his chair slowly, tall, tailored, infuriatingly composed. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The room already bent toward him the way gravity bends space. "You'll cut yourself," he continued, stepping closer. "Let staff handle it." "I am staff," Layla said before she could stop herself. A few men snorted. Someone whispered his name like a warning. Ashton looked down at her then, really looked, and something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or irritation. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that. "Well," he said lightly, "then you should know better." Layla stood, wiping her hands on her apron, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I do know better. That's why I apologized." The silence thickened. Ashton smiled, slow and amused. "What's your name?" "Layla." "No last name?" he asked. She shrugged. "I don't usually give my full biography when someone spills into me." That did it. Laughter rippled around the table, nervous and impressed. Ashton's friends watched him closely, waiting for the bite. The women watched Layla with open curiosity, some with envy, some with pity. Ashton laughed. "Fair enough. Layla." He said her name like he'd already decided it belonged to him. She turned away without waiting to be dismissed. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 3 hours later, Ashton leaned back in his chair, swirling whiskey in a crystal tumbler, eyes tracking Layla as she moved between tables. She didn't flirt. She didn't linger. She didn't look at him again, not once. "That one's different," Grant said beside him. "You see the way she shut you down?" Ashton smirked. "She didn't shut me down." "You sure about that?" Ashton took a slow sip. "Give me a month." Grant raised an eyebrow. "A month for what?" Ashton's gaze stayed on Layla. "To make her fall in love with me." The table erupted. "You're joking. She's not your type." "She's definitely not impressed." Ashton leaned forward, elbows on the table. "That's why it'll be easy." Grant laughed. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." Grant lifted his glass. "What's the wager?" Ashton didn't hesitate. $5 million. The room went quiet again. "5?" someone repeated. "If she falls for me in 30 days, Ashton continued, you pay up. If she doesn't, I donate it all. Publicly." Grant whistled. "You're out of your mind." Ashton smiled. "Watch me." Layla didn't see any of that. She was already in the kitchen, scrubbing champagne off her skin, breathing through the familiar mix of exhaustion and restraint. Rich men were all the same. Entitled. Curious. Temporary. She'd learned early not to confuse attention with intention. Weeks passed. Ashton returned the next Friday. Then again the week after that. Always with friends. Always polite. Always tipping far too much. The first time Layla slid the receipt back to him, he blinked. "Is there a problem?" "Yes," she said calmly. "That tip is more than my rent." "And?" "And I didn't earn it." Ashton studied her. "You did your job. So do surgeons. They don't get paid extra for holding a scalpel." Grant choked on his drink. Ashton laughed again, softer this time. "Keep it." Layla shook her head. "No." Something in his chest tightened. No one had ever said that to him before. By week 3, Ashton stopped bringing friends. By week 4, Layla started noticing. "You're here a lot," she said one night as she refilled his glass. "I like the food. We change the menu weekly." He smiled. "Then I like the service." She arched a brow. "Careful." "Of what?" "Of mistaking access for interest." His smile faded. "You think that's what I'm doing?" "I think men like you don't notice women like me unless you're bored." He leaned closer. "And women like you think men like me can't be serious." "Because you can't," she said gently. "Not about this." Something passed between them then, something sharp and honest. Ashton leaned back. "Have dinner with me." "No." Coffee? No. A walk? She hesitated. I work 2 jobs. I'll walk you home. Silence stretched. Fine, she said finally. 1 walk. No cars. No money. No games. He nodded. Deal. The walk changed everything. Rain fell halfway down the block, light at first, then relentless. Layla laughed despite herself, hair plastering to her face. Ashton shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without asking. I don't need. I know, he said. But I want to. They walked slower after that. I grew up in Brooklyn, Layla said. Not the cute part. I grew up in boardrooms, Ashton replied. No windows. She glanced at him. That sounds lonely. He swallowed. It was. They stopped under a flickering streetlight. Rain soaked them both. The city hummed around them, indifferent. You don't know me, Layla said quietly. I'd like to, Ashton replied. She looked up at him then, really looked, and for the first time she didn't see a billionaire. She saw a man standing in the rain, unsure. This isn't a game to me, she said. His throat tightened. Neither is it to me, he lied, and hated himself for it. That night, Ashton didn't report back to Grant. He stared at his phone long after midnight, Layla's laugh replaying in his head, the weight of his jacket still warm with her scent. For the first time in his life, the bet didn't feel like a victory waiting to happen. It felt like a warning. Ashton didn't sleep that night. Or the night after. By the end of the week, Grant noticed. You look like hell, Grant said over lunch, eyeing the untouched steak in front of Ashton. What happened to you? Nothing, Ashton replied, distracted, his phone lighting up with an email he didn't open. That's the problem. You never do nothing. Ashton smirked faintly. I'm pacing myself. Grant laughed. For a waitress. Ashton's jaw tightened. Don't call her that. Grant leaned back. Oh, that's new. Ashton didn't respond. Layla noticed the change too, even if she tried to pretend she didn't. Ashton no longer leaned back like he owned the place. He listened. He asked questions and waited for the answers. When she was slammed with orders, he didn't interrupt. When her shift ended, he didn't push. You don't have to stay, she said one night, tying her apron. I know. Then why are you? He shrugged. I like being here. She studied him, suspicious. People don't usually like places that don't give them anything. He met her gaze. Maybe they don't know what they're missing. She scoffed. You're still talking like a man who always gets what he wants. And you're still talking like someone who expects disappointment. That hit too close. Weeks passed. They walked more. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes arguing about nothing. Sometimes laughing so hard Layla forgot to check the time. Ashton learned her routines. Layla learned his tells. You do that thing, she said one evening, stopping abruptly on the sidewalk. What thing? You stop listening when you don't like where the conversation's going. He frowned. I do not. You just did it. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Fine. Maybe I do. She smiled. See? Growth. That smile haunted him for days. By the second month, the bet was rotting in Ashton's chest. Grant cornered him at another party, this one louder, messier, full of women Ashton didn't recognize and no longer cared to. You're ghosting us, Grant said over the bass. And how? I'm not ghosting her. You sure? Because it's been almost 8 weeks. Ashton's voice dropped. I know. So what's the plan? Ashton stared at the floor. I don't know anymore. Grant laughed, sharp. That's not an answer. Ashton looked up. I'm not sure I want it to be. Grant's smile faded. You're falling. No, Ashton said quickly. I'm changing. Grant scoffed. Same thing. Ashton left the party early. Layla felt the distance before Ashton said anything. She always did. You've been quiet, she said during their next walk. I've been busy. Busy is different from distracted. He sighed. You don't miss much. I had to learn, she replied. People leave without warning. He stopped walking. I'm not leaving. She crossed her arms. Then tell me what's wrong. The truth pressed against his teeth. He almost said it. Almost. Instead, he said, I'm not used to caring what someone thinks of me. She studied his face. That sounds like a lonely way to live. He nodded. It is. She stepped closer, her voice soft. Why me? The question scared him more than the bet ever had. I don't know, he admitted. You don't want anything from me. Her eyes darkened. Everyone wants something. Not you. Not money, she corrected. That doesn't mean I don't want security. Or honesty. Guilt clawed at him. You're honest, she added. Sometimes painfully so. He laughed weakly. I don't know if that's true. She touched his arm briefly, a grounding gesture. Then figure it out. The night it broke quietly. Layla was working late when a co-worker handed her a phone. Some guy asked me to give you this. She frowned. Who? He said his name was Grant. Her stomach dropped. She stepped into the hallway and answered. Hello? Grant's voice was smooth. Too smooth. Layla, right? Yes. I just wanted to say congratulations. For what? For lasting this long. Silence. What are you talking about? Layla asked slowly. Grant chuckled. You don't know? Know what? The bet. Her heart started pounding. What bet? The one Ashton made. About you. The hallway felt suddenly too small. He said he could make you fall in love with him in 30 days, Grant continued casually. We extended it, obviously. You're tougher than we thought. Layla's throat closed. This isn't funny. Oh, it's not a joke. $5 million on the line. Public donation if he loses. She hung up without another word. Her hands shook as she slid the phone back onto the counter. Ashton arrived 20 minutes later, smiling like everything was normal. Hey, he said softly. You okay? Layla stared at him. Did you make a bet about me? She asked. The room went silent. Ashton's smile vanished. Who told you? Her laugh was hollow. So it's true. Layla. How long? She demanded. How long was I a game to you? He stepped closer. It started that way. I won't lie. She stepped back. Don't touch me. I didn't mean for it to. To what? Matter? Her voice broke. I trusted you. I know, he whispered. She shook her head, tears burning. I told you this wasn't a game. I stopped playing, he said desperately. Weeks ago. But you didn't tell me, she snapped. You let me believe you were different. I am different now. She wiped her eyes angrily. That doesn't erase what you did. He reached for her again, slower this time. I fell in love with you. She flinched as if struck. Don't, she said. Don't say that like it fixes anything. She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his chest, and for the first time, Ashton Miller felt completely powerless. He stood there long after she was gone, the echo of her footsteps louder than any crowd he'd ever commanded. For once in his life, he understood what it meant to lose something that money could never buy. Enjoying the story so far? Make sure you subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter of the adventure. Ashton didn't go back to the restaurant. 4 days, he told himself it was respect. Space. The decent thing to do. The truth was simpler and uglier. He didn't trust himself to look at Layla without breaking apart. New York went on without noticing. Meetings were held. Stocks rose. Deals closed. His name still carried weight, still opened doors, still commanded rooms. None of it mattered. At night, he replayed her voice. How long was I a game to you? There was no answer that didn't damn him. Weeks passed. Layla stopped taking the long way home. She picked up extra shifts. She said yes when her manager asked if she could work doubles. She kept herself busy enough that exhaustion replaced thought. It worked. Mostly. Until one night, when she reached for her phone without thinking. She didn't call him. She stared at his name until the screen dimmed. You okay? Her co-worker asked as they closed together. Yeah, Layla said automatically. Just tired. That was the lie she told everyone. The truth was heavier. She felt foolish. Angry. Small. Not because of the bet, but because she'd let herself believe she was different. That she'd finally been seen as more than a background character in someone else's story. The worst part wasn't that Ashton had lied. It was that, for weeks, he hadn't. And that scared her more than anything. Ashton broke first. He showed up outside the restaurant one evening, not to go in, just to stand across the street and watch the lights glow through the windows. He saw Layla moving inside, her silhouette familiar even from a distance. She laughed at something a customer said. The sound reached him anyway. It knocked the breath from his lungs. He turned away before she could see him. That night, Grant showed up unannounced at Ashton's penthouse. You're ruining your life, Grant said, pouring himself a drink without asking. Ashton didn't respond. You lost the bet, Grant continued. Fair and square. She didn't fall in 30 days. Or 60. Or whatever we stretched it into. I know. So why do you look like you lost everything? Ashton finally looked at him. Because I did. Grant scoffed. You're still the richest man in the room. That's the problem, Ashton said quietly. I always am. Grant shook his head. You're romanticizing this. She's not your salvation. No, Ashton agreed. She's my consequence. Grant laughed once, sharp. You're going to apologize? Yes. And when she says no? Ashton swallowed. Then I'll live with it. Grant studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You really did fall. Ashton didn't deny it. Layla found the envelope in her mailbox 2 weeks later. There was no logo. No return address. Just her name, written neatly. Inside was a letter. She didn't open it right away. She sat on her bed, staring at it, her chest tight. She already knew who it was from. When she finally unfolded the paper, Ashton's handwriting filled the page. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't explain the bet in detail. He wrote about shame. About realizing too late that power had taught him how to take, not how to deserve. About how meeting her had stripped him down to someone he didn't recognize, but wanted to be. I don't expect you to answer, he wrote. I just needed you to know that loving you changed me. Even if it never changes your mind. Tears blurred the words. She folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope, her hand steady this time. She didn't throw it away. Months shifted the world quietly. Autumn bled into winter. Layla started school again, taking night classes she'd put off for years. She focused on herself with a ferocity born of disappointment. If she was going to be hurt, she decided, she would at least be moving forward. Ashton watched from a distance, not physically, not anymore, but through changes he made without announcement. He pulled funding from a restaurant group known for exploiting staff and redirected it into fair wage initiatives. He stepped down from boards that no longer aligned with his values. When a journalist asked why, he answered simply, because I can. For the first time, it didn't sound like arrogance. It sounded like responsibility. They ran into each other by accident. It was a small bookstore in Brooklyn, the kind that smelled like dust and coffee and quiet rebellion. Layla reached for a book at the same time Ashton did. Their hands brushed. Both froze. I'm sorry, Ashton said immediately, stepping back. Layla's heart slammed against her ribs. It's fine. They stood there, awkward, surrounded by shelves that suddenly felt too close. You look, well, he said. She nodded. So do you. A lie. He looked thinner. Tired. Real. I read your letter, she said before she could stop herself. His breath hitched. You did. I didn't answer. I know. Silence stretched. I'm not angry anymore, she added quietly. But that doesn't mean I'm ready. I wouldn't expect you to be. She studied him. Why are you here? He gestured vaguely. I like this place. She smiled faintly. Of course you do. They laughed, softly, carefully. I'm glad you're okay, he said. So am I, she replied. They parted without promises. But something shifted. Weeks later, Layla showed up to the restaurant to find it closed. A sign on the door read, Private Event. Her manager waved her inside. You're still getting paid. Don't worry. The dining room was empty. Except for Ashton. He stood near the window, hands clasped, no suit, no audience. This isn't a grand gesture, he said quickly when she stopped short. I know those don't mean anything. Layla crossed her arms. Then what is this? An invitation, he said. No pressure. No expectations. She hesitated, then nodded once. They Saturday. They talked. Not about the bet. About time. About fear. About what it meant to start over without pretending the past didn't exist. I don't need you to forget, Ashton said. I need you to see who I am now. Layla met his gaze. And if I can't? Then I'll still be grateful I met you. Something in his voice, steady, unguarded, made her chest ache. For the first time since everything fell apart, she believed him. Not enough to forgive. But enough to hope. And hope, she knew, was the most dangerous thing of all. Hope didn't arrive gently. It crept in like an unwelcome guest, quiet and persistent, settling into corners Layla had worked hard to empty. She didn't go back to Ashton right away. She didn't call. She didn't text. She let days stretch into weeks, testing herself, testing him. What surprised her most wasn't how much she missed him, but how little he pushed. He sent no flowers. No gifts. No dramatic messages. Instead, he showed up where he said he would. When he invited her for coffee, he waited outside the cafe instead of walking in ahead of her. When she was late, he didn't complain. When she cancelled, he replied with a simple, another time. Take care. That restraint unsettled her more than his confidence ever had. One afternoon, after class, she finally agreed to see him again. They sat on opposite ends of a park bench, the city buzzing around them. Children laughed. A man played saxophone nearby, the notes slow and aching. "You don't have to sit so far away," Layla said. Ashton shifted closer, careful not to touch her. "I'm trying not to assume." She glanced at him. "Assume what?" "That I'm welcome." She swallowed. "You're trying." "I am," he said quietly. "And I know trying doesn't erase what I did." She nodded. "Good. Because I don't want you to forget." "I won't," he said. "I can't." They talked for hours. Not about romance. About work. About school. About the parts of themselves they didn't usually offer up first. Ashton told her about his mother, how she'd loved fiercely but briefly, how her death had taught him to protect himself with ambition and appetite. Layla told him about her father, how losing him young had taught her not to rely on promises. "You're afraid of abandonment," Ashton said softly. She smiled without humor. "And you're afraid of staying." He exhaled. "Seems unfair we found each other, then." "Or inevitable," she replied. That night, when they parted, there was no kiss. Just a long look. And a choice not to rush. Weeks passed like that. Slow. Intentional. Honest. Ashton stopped being a guest in Layla's life and started becoming a presence. He showed up when her car broke down. When she was sick. When she passed an exam she'd nearly failed. He never offered money. The first time she asked why, he said, "Because I don't want you to wonder what I'm buying." That answer stayed with her. Still, doubt lingered. One evening, as they walked along the river, Layla stopped abruptly. "Say it," she said. "Say what?" "What happens when people like you get bored?" Ashton turned to face her fully. "I don't get bored." "You used to," she said. "With women. With everything." He nodded. "I did." "And what makes me different?" she pressed. "Really?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because you didn't want me. And you still don't need me." Her throat tightened. "I don't want to be your lesson," she whispered. "You're not," he said firmly. "You're my decision." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Okay." It wasn't forgiveness. But it was permission. The kiss came weeks later, not when either of them expected it. They were standing in her kitchen, arguing about something trivial. Burnt toast, maybe, or whether coffee tasted better black. "You're impossible," Layla said, laughing. "So are you," Ashton replied. She shook her head, turned away, and he touched her hand. Just her hand. "Layla," he said quietly. "Tell me to stop." She turned back, her eyes searching his. "Don't stop." The kiss was slow. Careful. And when it ended, she rested her forehead against his chest, breathing him in. "If you ever make me feel small again," she said softly, "I'll walk away." "I know," he replied. "And I'll let you." That promise mattered. The world, however, wasn't as patient. A photo surfaced online weeks later. Old. Ashton leaving a club with a woman on his arm, dated months before Layla. The comments were cruel. "Men like him don't change. She's naive. This won't last." Layla saw it during her lunch break. Her hands shook. She didn't call him. That night, Ashton showed up at her door, breathless. "I saw it," he said before she could speak. "I wanted you to hear it from me." She crossed her arms. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I was ashamed," he admitted. "And because it meant nothing." "Nothing to you," she said. "Everything to the internet." He stepped closer. "It was before you." "That's not the point," she said sharply. "The point is trust." "I know," he said. "And I should have said something." Silence pressed between them. Layla looked away. "I don't want to be embarrassed again." He swallowed. "Then don't be with me." She looked back, startled. "I mean it," he continued. "If being with me costs you your peace, I don't deserve you." Her chest tightened. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Why aren't you fighting harder?" "Because fighting for you doesn't mean trapping you," he said. "It means choosing you, even if you don't choose me back." Tears burned her eyes. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. "I hate that you're right," she whispered. He held her like she might vanish. The next morning, Layla made a decision. She invited Ashton to meet her family. It wasn't a grand event. Just dinner. Just her mother, her aunt, her cousins. Ashton arrived early, nervous in a way no boardroom had ever made him. Her mother studied him carefully. "You hurt my daughter once." "Yes, Ashton said. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I never do again. Her mother nodded slowly. We'll see. Dinner was awkward. Honest. Real. When Ashton helped clear the table without being asked, Layla's aunt raised an eyebrow. When he listened more than he spoke, Layla noticed. Later, as they stood outside under the porch light, Layla squeezed his hand. You passed, she said. He laughed shakily. Barely. She leaned into him. We're not there yet. I know. But we're closer. He kissed her hair. That's enough. It wasn't love like fireworks. It was love like rebuilding. And both of them knew the hardest part was still ahead. Because when you truly change, the final test isn't whether you can win someone's heart. It's whether you can keep choosing them when the world reminds you who you used to be. The final test didn't announce itself. It arrived quietly, disguised as opportunity. Ashton was offered a seat on an international expansion deal that would pull him out of New York for a year, Europe, Asia, the kind of visibility that once would have thrilled him. The kind of move that had defined his entire adult life. He stared at the email long after midnight, Layla asleep beside him, her breathing slow and even, her hand curled loosely into the fabric of his shirt. Months ago, he wouldn't have hesitated. Now, his first thought wasn't profit or prestige. It was distance. In the morning, Layla noticed the change in him immediately. You're thinking too loud, she said, handing him coffee. He smiled faintly. You always know. Try me. He told her everything. The offer. The travel. The timeline. She listened without interrupting, her face carefully neutral. When he finished, she nodded once. That's huge. It is. You've worked your whole life for things like this. Yes, he said slowly. But I don't know if I want it anymore. She looked at him then, really looked. Don't choose me out of fear. I'm not, he said quickly. I'm choosing you out of clarity. She shook her head. That's still a choice I don't want you to resent later. I won't. You don't know that. He reached for her hand. I know myself now. She pulled back gently. Ashton, love shouldn't shrink either of us. Her words stayed with him all day. That night, Ashton turned the deal down. Not dramatically. Not publicly. He simply replied, thank you, but this no longer aligns with my priorities. The relief surprised him. The fear didn't. When Layla found out weeks later, she was furious. You did what? She demanded, standing in the middle of his living room. I said no. Why would you do that without talking to me? Because I already had, he replied. You said you didn't want to be the reason I gave things up. And you still did it. Yes. She stared at him, torn between anger and something dangerously close to love. I didn't ask you to do that, she said. I know, he replied. I asked myself. Her voice broke. Do you have any idea how much pressure that puts on me? He stepped closer. I'm not asking you to carry it. I'm telling you I can. Silence filled the room. Finally, Layla exhaled slowly. I need to know something. Anything. If tomorrow I decided I didn't want this anymore, would you still be okay with who you've become? The question cut deep. Ashton closed his eyes for a moment. Yes, he said honestly. Because you didn't create this version of me. You revealed it. Tears slid down her cheeks. That's the first time, she whispered, a man has ever chosen himself in a way that didn't hurt me. He reached for her, hesitant. This time, she didn't pull away. The proposal didn't come right away. Ashton waited. He waited through Layla finishing another semester. Through holidays spent learning traditions that weren't his. Through arguments that ended not in silence, but in understanding. He waited until love felt steady instead of desperate. One evening, months later, Ashton asked Layla to walk with him. They ended up at the same street light where they'd stood in the rain the first night everything shifted. The city buzzed around them, alive and indifferent, just as it had been then. Layla smiled softly. You brought me here on purpose. I did. She looked around. Why? Because this is where I stopped pretending, he said. And where you decided not to walk away. Her chest tightened. You remember everything. I remember what mattered. He reached into his coat pocket, then stopped. Before I do this, he said, voice steady but low, I need to say something. Layla nodded, already emotional. I didn't fall in love with you because you changed me, he continued. I fell in love with you because you never asked me to. He sank down onto one knee. The city seemed to fall quiet. Layla Kingston, Ashton said, his voice thick, I bet once that I couldn't fall in love. I was wrong about everything. Loving you didn't make me weaker. It taught me how to stay. He opened the box, not flashy, not oversized, just elegant and intentional. I don't want to own your future, he said. I want to walk into it beside you. As your equal. As your partner. As the man who will keep choosing you, even when it's hard. Tears streamed down her face. Will you marry me? Layla covered her mouth, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, she said through her tears. Yes. Ashton stood, pulling her into his arms as the world rushed back in. Horns, footsteps, laughter, life. This time, neither of them felt small. Love hadn't been the bet he lost. It was the life he finally won. If you felt anything while listening to this story, if it made your heart race, made you smile, or reminded you that real love still exists, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button to support the channel, subscribe so you never miss a new romance story, and turn on notifications to stay close to every heartbeat, every twist, every unforgettable love. And I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your city, your country, your corner of the world. Your support helps this channel grow, and your comments inspire the next love story.